Well, good morning, generations. How y'all doing this morning? Man, it is so good to be with you. Really a pleasure for me to be here with you. You know, there are a lot of churches in our country, and I love them all, but Generations is one on the list for me that I love especially much, okay? Like I feel like the Apostle Paul in Philippians 1 talking to the Philippian church, and he said, you guys, I always have you on my mind. I always have you in my heart. I always have you in my prayers. And guys, that is so true of me and Generations. You may not know this, but through connection with your lead pastor, Johnny, we go back a long way. And we are in constant contact with each other and a couple other pastors all the time. And I have been praying for your church on a weekly basis, at least weekly, for almost a decade. This is the first time that I've had the opportunity to be here and to worship with you guys and to speak, but it is such an honor, such a blessing to be here. I want to thank Johnny for giving me the invitation to do it, and I'm excited to jump into this House of David series that you guys are in right now this summer. What a great series to dive into. We're going to jump into a story today that I would imagine for many of you is a story about David you've never heard, and it's almost a shame because it's a phenomenal one. It is a phenomenal story, takes place in the time between when David was anointed to be the king, and he was in that waiting period. You looked at this the last week. He's with the group of guys that's kind of the discontented with life crew, and they're waiting to figure out what's next. He's not yet king, and this is in that moment of time, and David has something happen where a decision or a response was put out in front of him, and he almost blew it. He almost blew it. And I think as he looked back, probably for the rest of his life, he could look back at that moment and go, whoa, that could have been way worse. That could have been so bad. About 6 weeks ago, I was in a car accident with my youngest son, and we were doing 65 miles an hour. A car decided to just cross right in front of us, didn't see us coming, and we T-boned them, almost no brakes, and ended up out into a field in the grass, both of us on all four wheels, and 6 people between 2 cars walked away. We went through the whole experience, and I got out, and as the weeks have gone on, I have looked backwards at that event, and I keep saying, man, that could have been so much worse. God was watching over us. God stepped in and helped us in that moment. And I think you're going to see that in this story today. There's huge application. I think you'll start feeling it and connecting it to your life readily when we start telling this story. But I'm going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 25 today. So if you have a Bible or a Bible app on your phone, 1 Samuel 25 is where we're going to be. I'm going to jump right in with verse 1. And this takes place right after the prophet Samuel died. In fact, verse 1 says that now Samuel died and all Israel assembled and mourned for him. And they buried him at his home in Ramah. And then David moved down to the desert of Paran, and a certain man in Maon who had property there at Carmel, he was very wealthy. He had 1,000 goats, 3,000 sheep, which he was shearing in Carmel. His name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. She was intelligent and a beautiful woman, but her husband was surly and mean in his dealings. He was a Calebite. So after Samuel dies, David and this group of men, this group of renegades that he's with, he's not king yet. God's not made it clear when that's going to happen. He's in a season of waiting. That can be hard, trying to figure out what's next, where are we going to go. At some point, they've got to find a way to make ends meet. And so what they do is they find themselves providing private security for a farmer. Private security was a thing back then because sheep farming could actually be pretty dangerous. I mean, you not only had to hire shepherds, you had to hire security to protect the shepherds. Because in those days, nomadic gangs would come and just wreak havoc on shepherds and on farms and on little villages. And so owners of the sheep would sometimes protect their people, their investment, and their sheep, their farms, by hiring these guys to do some security. David and his guys have been hired to do that exact type of work. Now remember, these guys, remember who these got? They were labeled as men who were distressed, in debt, or discontented with life. That sounds like a perfect security detail, doesn't it? He's got these guys, And they are serving in this way. David, of course, is got his own military background. He's their commander. They will follow him wherever he calls them to go. He's going to be the king. He's not king yet. And what we're going to see in this story is that he almost derailed everything that God had in store of him. Almost derailed everything that God had planned for his life by making a huge mistake. Verse 4 says, while David was in the wilderness, he heard that Nabal was shearing sheep. Now, sheep shearing time means payday for David and his men. You might not have heard that when you read it, but let me just refresh your memory of this moment in the context. There is no direct deposit back then. There is no, the check is in the mail. And there is not even that when you work, you're paid within a 2-week window. This was something where you might provide a bunch of work over a period of months and not get paid until a whole season has been complete. That season is complete, and it was customary when it was shearing time, when the farmer was going to make his money, that he would set aside a portion of his proceeds, a portion of the money he made from the sheep shearing, and he would pay both his shepherds and the security who helped protect the shepherds and help them to do his work. So David sends 10 men as an envoy to go collect the money that they were deserved. We'll learn later that they had already had an agreement with this man named Nabal. What David's doing is not threatening. This is normal. This is customary. This is the way it would work. They would go and that they would ask politely for the money that they were owed to be paid. And it says in verse 9 that when David's men arrived, they gave Nabal this message in David's name. And then they waited. They said to Nabal, hey, it's time. David asked us to come and to pick this money. And Nabal answered David's servants, who is David? Who is this son of Jesse? Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days. Why should I take my bread and water and the meat that I've slaughtered for my shearers and give it back to men coming from who knows where? David's men turned around and they went back. And when they got back, they reported every word. Who is David? Are you kidding me? They were singing songs about David like Saul's killed his thousands, David his 10,000s. David had already slayed Goliath. I mean, David's name was known. Not only that, they had already made an agreement. He knew who David was. This was a complete disrespect that was shown here. You can feel the temperature rising in this story as you see this response from Nabal to David's men. Who is David? Now we don't get anything in the text about David's men doing or saying anything that they should not have. But you better believe there were some conversations and there were some thoughts from those guys. Knowing who they were, knowing their background, knowing the kind of men and the special set of skills that they had, I guarantee you, there were some conversations. They refrained publicly, and they go back to David carrying this message of disrespect. David's response is found in verse 13. David said to his men, each of you strap on your sword. So they did, and David strapped on his as well. And about 400 men went up with David, while 200 stayed with the supplies. I mean, remember who David's friends are. David is now in a fury. He is angry. And some of these guys who are with him are among some of the greatest warriors who have ever lived. And now they're willing to go and do whatever he wants to do. They don't need to be persuaded much to join David and to have his back and to get in a fight. Listen, it is great to have people who have your back when you are disrespected. It is great to have people who have your back when you are in crisis. But sometimes fools run in a pack. Speaking of fools, any Yankees fans in here? I'm just kidding. My dad grew up a Yankees fan. Like a lot of guys growing up in the 50s and 60s, Mickey Mantle was his favorite player. And my favorite Mickey Mantle story of all time involves Mickey and Billy Martin. Some of you guys remember Billy, who played with Mickey, but also was a fiery manager and fired multiple times as a manager of the New York Yankees. But one of the most incredible stories took place after both of their playing careers when Billy Martin was a manager. He was managing for the Texas Rangers. He had won Manager of the Year. And after that year, he was awarded a gift of a new shotgun by Major League Baseball. And so Mickey said, hey, Billy, you're in Arlington, Texas area. I've got a friend a couple hours south. He's a doctor. He's got a big old piece of property. He's always told me that I could come hunt on it. And why don't we get up one morning? We'll get up early. We'll drive down there, and we'll go hunt on this guy's farm. You can use your new gun. Of course, Billy thought that was a great idea, and so they arranged it, made sure it was going to work. And it's a different era. It's a different day. And they just drove all the way down there without a phone call or without checking ahead of time to talk to the landowner, but they just showed up one morning at his house. Mickey goes to the door and knocks on the door, and doctor comes out. He's home, and he goes, well, hey, Mick, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm here with Billy and came to hunt, if that'd be okay. You said we could. And, oh, sure, Mick, that would be great. Let me get you some keys for the gate so that you guys can get out into the pasture area. And he said, okay. And then as he comes back with the keys, he says to him, hey, listen, Mickey, I am so glad you're here today. Listen, I got something that I need you to help me with. I've got an old mule. You're going to see him when you go out to go do your hunt. He's right by the barn. He is over 20 years old. He is on his last legs. He's blind. He's deaf. Like, we need to put him down, and I don't have the heart to do it. I can't. He's like a pet to us. Would you do me a favor? And when you go out to hunt, would you first would you put down that mule for me? You would be, and Mickey's like, no, I'm not going to shoot your mule. And he's like, no, Mick, I'm serious. You would be doing me a huge favor if you would do this. He's like, oh, okay, I guess I will. Well, as he walks back to the truck where Billy Martin is, he gets this ornery idea that he's going to act like he wasn't allowed to hunt on this farm, that they just drove for 3+ hours down to this farm and that this guy didn't let him hunt on it. And so he rips open the door and he says to Billy, can you believe this guy? We drove all the way down here and he don't want to let us hunt. He's not going to let us on his land. And Billy's like, you got to be kidding me. If you know Billy and his temper, there's probably some extra words in there as well. And so he goes, no. Mickey said, I'm so mad. I'm going to go shoot his mule. I'm so mad. He goes, oh, Mick, no, you can't shoot his mule. And he goes, I'm going to do it. Give me my gun. And so, Billy, being the friend he is, hands him his gun. And they go traipsing off into the farm, and bang, Mickey just drops that mule. And as soon as he does, right behind him, bang, bang, 2 more shots. He turns around, and there's Billy with his gun up. And he goes, we'll teach that son of a gun. I just got 2 of his cows. True story. Listen, anger can be dangerous and contagious. David is fuming. And he's got a group of guys who will shoot first and ask questions later surrounding him. They are ready to go. They are ready to fight. There is massive bloodshed right around the corner. But just as David and his men gear up for a fight, a woman steps into the story to bring wisdom and grace to the moment that neither Nabal or David had. Ladies, you are a gift. You are a gift. And one of the great gifts that you have is the ability to de-escalate your knucklehead men when anger starts to set them off. My wife is an Enneagram 9 peacemaker. And she is the most amazing thing and the most amazing gift that God has ever given me, because she brings calm to my chaos all the time. I don't know that I can blame it on my DNA, but I'm going to for just a second. There is something about the men in my lineage where our blood pressure, our anger temperature, it sits at 211 at all times. 212 is boiling. 2:11 is like waking up in the morning. And so sometimes it doesn't take much to set the next thing off. And my wife has such a gift at bringing the calm to the chaos. Listen, in this moment, there were multiple witnesses. There were multiple people who heard what Nabal said about David. He had advisors who saw this down. He knew the real story. He knew what the agreement was. He knew all the backstory. They were too scared. Nabal was too powerful. And everybody else was too stubborn to tell him to do something about it. None of the guys would step up. So it took a courageous woman to do what none of the men were willing to do. Sometimes that's what it takes. I think about Easter morning, resurrection morning, and the fact that it was a group of women that were the first ones to the tomb. I've always asked the question internally, why? Why were the women the ones that went to the tomb in the morning? Is it because they were more devoted? More courageous? Probably. But maybe more than anything, they just knew you can't leave a job to a man that a woman can do better. They didn't trust the guys to do it right. And so they're there because they know we've got the ability to do this. In our story, after this exchange between Nabal and David's men is relayed to Abigail, Nabal's wife, she goes, oh no, oh no, because she knows that David's men were good to them. She knows that they never mistreated anybody, any of the shepherds, any of the villagers, anybody. She knows that David's men were like a wall around them and had kept all threats out. She knew that not a thing went missing on their watch. Nothing was taken, nothing was stolen. She knew that this was not going to end well without her intervention. So verse 18 says, Abigail acted quickly. She took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, 5 seahs of roasted grain, 100 cakes of raisins, and 200 cakes of pressed figs, and loaded them on a donkey. Abigail knows men are simple creatures. Simple creatures. Simple creatures. She knows that David isn't just angry, he's hangry. He's hangry. He needs a Snickers. He needs something to kind of take the edge off it. We're taking meat, we're taking wine, and we're taking cakes into this conversation. But it's more than just feeding the men. It's about honor. It's about respect. David had been grossly disrespected by Nabal. Abigail says, no, they earned that honor. They earned that respect, and we're going to show them that respect. Plus, he'll listen better if his belly's full. Then verse 19, she says to her servants, go on ahead, I'll follow you. But she didn't tell her husband Nabal. And as she came riding on her donkey into a mountain ravine, there was David and his men descending towards her. And she met them. And David had just said, man, it's been useless. All my watching over this fellow's property in the wilderness so that nothing of his was missing. And he paid me back evil for good. May God deal with David, be it ever so severely, if by morning I leave alive one male of all who belong to him. David now has gone from rightfully angry to losing his mind. And he actually thinks that he's going to do God's bidding in this situation. Have you ever gotten so angry and been so justified in your anger you felt like just about any response would be appropriate? And that anyone, if you told them the list of things that happened and your response to it would be a justifiable response, maybe even God himself. God, you see it, you know it, you're able to understand what's going on. What David is doing, though, instead of doing God's bidding, he's actually premeditating murder. Just like Cain did in Genesis chapter 4. You realize how deep-seated anger is to the human experience? Do you realize how close to the fall anger is connected to the human experience? When did sin enter the conversation in the book of Genesis chapter 3? When is the first murder? Chapter 4. We didn't make it 4 chapters into the story of humanity without somebody killing somebody else because of anger. Before Cain killed his brother Abel, God told him this. He said, Cain, this is Genesis 4:7, sin is crouching at your door, and it desires to have you, but you must rule over it. What David is realizing is what Cain was having to realize in his moment of anger. Is that sometimes when it comes to becoming the person that God has called you to be and to stay on the journey that God is calling you to be, sometimes even though there are outside pressures and there are things that you could say it's their fault, they did it, they messed it up, they slowed me down, sometimes you are your own roadblock. Sometimes the struggle and the issue and the problem is looking right at you in the mirror. And no matter what somebody else did, it's your moment and your chance. We are truly, at times, our own worst enemy. For many of us, part of what gets us off the course that God would have us is the same issue that got David off course. Issue of anger. Anger. And we handle anger differently as people. We're wired differently. You know, you got introverts and extroverts. I think with anger, people are either rhinos or porcupines. Both are bad. Both are bad. I think we've kind of pictured, like David in this story is a rhino. Like he's just going to go charge over, stomp you, gore you with his horn. Like that's just who he is. But then there's this other like more socially acceptable version of anger called the porcupine. But man, it's not fun either. It has a lot of hurt associated with it. And so it just says, hey, I'm just going to ball up, and I'm going to be real prickly. I'm going to be real hard to get to know. I'm going to be real hard to be around. I'm going to do it. And if you push me too hard, well, I pop. And when I finally do pop, you'll know it. It'll hurt. It'll leave a mark when it's all said and done. Are you a porcupine or a rhino? I see some nudges going on right here. You know it. Your spouse knows it. Your friends know it. They're both ways to handle or to respond to pain. But here's the thing. However you're wired, the Bible has one prevailing message on the topic of anger. One from Genesis to Revelation. The one message on anger that just keeps showing up over and over and over again is this. There is a time to get angry, but the time to stay angry is very short. There is a time to be angry. It is possible. It is actually possible for you to be angry justifiably, righteously. There is a time to be angry, but the time to stay angry is very, very short. Ephesians chapter 4 talks about not letting the sun go down on your anger. Making sure that this thing is not stretching out into the next calendar day. It talks about in your anger, not sinning. That means that you have to learn not to manage anger. That's the language we like to use. You need to go to anger management class. Anger cannot be managed. Anger has to be put out. It's a fire. It's a fire. I need you to think of it like that. And to think of it how you would in any room of your house if you had it. If you had a little fire burning in your kitchen, you would not go, oh, it's no big deal. It's just a little fire. It's fine. Just let it burn. Or if it was in the bathroom or the bedroom or the garage. Any fire is bad fire in your house. It's the same way with anger. Just a little fire can turn to something raging pretty quickly. And Abigail in our story brings the wisdom and the fire extinguisher to the situation. Verse 23. When Abigail saw David, she quickly got off her donkey, bowed down before him with her face to the ground. She fell at his feet and she said, "Pardon your servant, my lord, and let me speak to you. Hear what your servant has to say. Please pay no attention, my lord, to that wicked man Nabal. He's just like his name. His name means fool, and folly goes with him." Verse 28, she says, "Please forgive your servant's presumption. But the Lord your God will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my Lord, because you fight the Lord's battles, and no wrongdoing will be found on you as long as you live. Even though someone is pursuing you to take your life, the life of my Lord will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the will of the Lord your God. But by the lives of the enemies he will hurl away as from the pocket of a sling. And when the Lord has fulfilled for my Lord every good thing he promised concerning him and has appointed him ruler over Israel, my Lord will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed or of having avenged himself. And when the Lord your God has brought my Lord success, remember your servant. Abigail says two things essentially to David that are really, really crucial and important. Really critical to grab a hold of. The first one is this: my husband is an idiot. My husband is an idiot. So David, don't, because he's an idiot, don't let one deranged person lead you to do stupid stuff too. It happened. What he did was wrong. He's a fool. But David, don't respond in an equally stupid way. Let that problem be his problem. Don't create something else for yourself. That's the first thing she says. The second thing is this: David, you are the Lord's anointed. You are set to be the next king. Your legacy will be marred if you go through with this. This is not who God has called you to be. She's affirming the call that God has on his life and reminds him in this fit of rage that he's in, this is not who you are. This is not who God's called you to be. You don't want to look backwards 10 years down the road, 2 years down the road, 20 years down the road, on your deathbed and go, why did I respond that way? It'll be a blight that you will always wish that you could have taken out of your story. David, don't do it. Verse 32. David said to Abigail, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you today to meet me. And may you be blessed for your good judgment and for keeping me from bloodshed this day and from avenging myself with my own hands. Otherwise, as surely as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, who has kept me from harming you, if you had not come quickly to meet me, not one male belonging to Nabal would have been left alive by daybreak." Then David accepted from her hand what she had brought, and he said, "Go home in peace. I've heard your words, and I've granted your request." It's a stunning change of heart. It's a stunning change of heart. And David in that moment realizes he's wrong for what he's trying to do. A powerful de-escalation happens and David drops the fight. And then here's what happens. 10 days later, God strikes Nabal down of a heart attack. David never had to retaliate. He never had to have guilty blood on his hands. God took care of the situation later. And when David heard about it, here's what he said: "Praise be to the Lord, who's upheld my cause against Nabal for treating me with contempt. He's kept his servant from doing wrong, and he's brought Nabal's wrongdoing down on his own head." This is a huge moment in David's life. It's a legacy-preserving moment in David's life. He had a response of the flesh that was ready. But God intervened in a powerful way, and in a moment that changed the whole trajectory of his life, he surrendered what his emotions wanted to do, and he said, God has a better path for me and for my life. Here's what I want you to catch. The Bible, and a story like this, the Bible is not just a story of what was. It's a story of what can be. And David is a picture of people like you and me who are walking a path through life and sometimes have really hard, difficult, painful, disrespecting, maybe even abusive things happening to us. And as a result, there's pain And there's this desire to respond just as powerfully back at somebody. Specifically as it relates to moments where you have been hurt, disrespected, cheated, mistreated, and you rightfully are stirred to anger. I want you to remember the words that Abigail spoke to David. These were words of God that God spoke through Abigail to David. They were essentially this, if I could bring this into today's moment. They are this: their response is their responsibility, your response is your responsibility. Their response is their legacy, your response is your legacy. I find when it comes to the anger that comes from disrespect or personal hurt, this would go with any personal pain, but specifically this, that you and I, specifically those of us who are in this room who would say, I am a follower of Jesus Christ because he has met me in my brokenness. He's come to see me for not just who I was and the sum total of my mistakes and failures and brokenness, but he saw me. And in his great love, he met me in my place of brokenness and said, I will die in your place so that the hostility that your sin deserves is turned on me instead of you, so that you could walk in a newness of life, so that you could have peace because I have set you free from the burden of sin that you have when you get slighted, when you get cheated, when you get hurt, when you get offended. You have two choices. You either give somebody back what they gave you, or you give somebody back what God gave you. You either give them back, and maybe in even higher level what they gave you, and if you do, you will live with regret and pain. Or you can give them what God gave you. Grace, mercy. You can put out that anger. Guys, that's really where I want to land today, this conversation, is how do we then process when we find ourselves boiling over with anger, maybe not realizing in the moment how big of a deal the next decisions, the next words, the next actions could be, and what kind of a mark that it could leave on a legacy. Can I remind you that there's the gospel is in this story, that even when your response isn't perfect, David's wasn't. Even when your response isn't perfect, God's grace can perfect your story. It can perfect your legacy. Do you know what the New Testament understanding of perfection is? We would think of it as unblemished, like never ever made a mistake. The New Testament word for perfection is mature, complete. And your completion, your maturity, your perfection comes when you allow God into your story and allow him specifically in moments where your emotions want to take you as far away from the will of God as possible. And you go, no, God, you got a better path for me. How do I do that? How do I do that? How do I rewrite my legacy? How do I perfect my legacy? Well, you do it by putting out the fire of anger at the foot of the cross. You do it by looking at your Savior who died on your behalf to tear down hostility between not just you and God, but you and other people. You do it not only by pouring out your anger at the foot of the cross, putting out that fire, but by putting away the sword. Putting down the sword and allowing God to be the avenger. Let him be the one in his time to take care of the story. Like he did with Nabal, he will do with all people. God will set this story straight. Put down your sword. Put on Christ, the peace and the patience and the humility and the forgiveness, and put up your hands in surrender when your emotions are trying to lead you away from God. One of the most foundational aspects of following Jesus is being able to respond not in emotions, but according to the truth of God's will and God's word. It's not easy. I'm not going to pretend like it is, but there is hope. And listen, for you and I, this is the life that he's called us to recognize that even ordinary moments like today are a moment where he wants to speak into you, to extend his grace, and to give you a chance to perfect your legacy and your story. So in just a moment, I'm going to ask for you to respond. In fact, would you guys just go ahead and stand as a symbol of just being ready to respond? And I would just ask that as you stand, that you would think, maybe there's somebody here in this room that this is really connecting with. I'll tell you what, last night I got down on my knees in my hotel room and I prayed because I knew there'd be somebody in this room who's been carrying some anger about a situation or about a person, and it is staining you. It is causing a bitterness in you that is blurring out all the other details of life. That's not how God would have you live. And maybe this could be a day that you set that down. Maybe you mend that fence. Those same arms that could draw a sword could reach out and shake a hand, could reach out and put arms around somebody, could redeem and restore. What is God wanting to do in you and through you? How is God wanting to take what Jesus has done for you and allow it to guide you through some of the hard moments of pain and anger in your life? This is a time to respond to that very thing. As we sing this next song, if you want to talk with somebody or pray with somebody, we got people waiting up here at the front that would love to receive you and help you take that step. May you do so knowing God's grace is here for you in this moment to redeem and to restore and to perfect your story. Will you join me in a word of prayer as we step into this moment? Heavenly Father, God, we give you all praise, all glory. We ask for you in this moment to move in our midst, to stir our affections, to stir our hearts. And God, when we find ourselves in moments where you confront the responses of our flesh, God, may we surrender to your will so that we can look back like David did later and say, I am so thankful that you steered me away from that. And God, when we fall, when we make mistakes, may your grace descend on us yet even more, to be made in newness of life and to live from the freedom that grace establishes. We love you